What's up? What's up? What's up? Hmm. Why? Why do you hate me? We're back. Hey, Abby, how's it going? I had to make a sick. I had a burrito. I had burritos today, dude. I had to make a video. It's late because I had to make a video about that stupid transphobic comment. Like so, they always do that stuff for attention, you know. So I'm not like surprised. I'm not like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. Just more like it's hilarious coming from this guy that is like made a complete ass out of himself during during the thing. Like he's just looked like an idiot. And he's like, it's just so funny to me how these guys, I don't know, it's just so pathetic. I guess I was really shocked at, I'm always really shocked at how and when people live their life for other people, like in complete servitude to other guys. Like a lot of them, it seemed like all they were about, and the whole point of the night for them was that Trump was there and Trump was going to watch them fight, and they were like more happy about getting a chance to fight and win in front of Trump and his birthday party than anything else. It's just like so pathetic, man. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, have your own, be your own person. You know, like figure out something that you're going to contribute to the world that's bigger than yourself and contribute to that, as opposed to just making another man happy. It's so weird. And it's not like a homoerotic thing, right? Where they're, you know, in some way I am excitingly, right? I am happily living my life to partly to make my wife happy, right? Like there are decisions that I make in the world that are specifically designed to make her happy. But to do that, do so much for someone that isn't your spouse, isn't your partner, isn't your family member, and like devote so much of yourself to that guy or that person, I don't understand it. Yeah, Ghostbusters. I mean, the problem with UFC recently is that basically the champions are inactive. They don't fight a lot. So what happens when they don't fight is that they clog up the rankings because these guys refuse to fight more than once a week. These champions will basically they'll only fight maybe once a year, and as soon as they win, they try to go up in weight division so that they can be two-time champion, two belt champion, you know? immediately. And what happens is, because they fight so slowly, because they're constantly fighting weight divisions, the guys in the like 12 to 5 range all fight each other. So there's just bad card after bad card after bad card where people just aren't, they're not making, it's not good. It's just not, it's not good. That's not fun to watch. And that's just what's happens now. It's embarrassing. Genuinely. I would be embarrassed if I was Dana White. He's had the biggest and best names in the heavyweight division, for example, just completely leave. And it's because of things that he did directly. Like, he held up the entire heavyweight division for John Jones for years, just so that John Jones could fight. And then he didn't wind up doing it, and he pulled out at the last second. So it's like, you know, like, so he left, and then Aspinall left after that whole thing, because Aspinall's entire career, the main days, the main years of his life were subsumed by his nonsense. So guess what? So he was like, well, I'm out. I'm going to go do boxing now. And so John Jones was out now. Aspinall's out now. Negreanu's out now. So, like, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Dana White has not managed the UFC well. They just haven't. And it's so funny because of how many people that are like commenting on my stories and stuff right now. They obviously have never watched the UFC. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they're only into it because of politics. But now they're commenting on my story like, well, you got to bring politics into it. It's like, bro, you're only watching it because Trump is there and it's his birthday party. You don't know any of the background. You don't know what's going on other than it's Trump's birthday party. And they basically invented their love for Flag Day as if Flag Day was like this huge national holiday. But they, like, in their minds, they've drummed it up to where it's like as big as 4th of July. In their minds, like, it might as well be 4th of July. It's like, actually, it's bigger than 4th of July. You didn't know? You guys didn't know? You didn't know, guys? You didn't know? You didn't know? You didn't know? You didn't know that Flag Day was as big as 4th of July? Oh yeah, Worlds Conspire. No, it was pleasuring your mom every night. That's what it really is. You know, it was every day. This is what she likes to see. You know, I dyed it for her, and you know, so that's just what it is. But I thank you for, you know, your inheritance. DN, what's up, man? So I love the fake love for Flag Day. It's like all these ads and stuff about, guys, actually Flag Day is a really big deal. It's actually a really big deal. Okay. I actually really love it. Okay. Like, what, dude? What? There's no way, bro. There's no way. These guys are so cringe, man. Like, dude, no, you don't. You do not. Like, stop it. So funny. Hi, Haida. Yeah. Like, oh, I didn't just start liking Flag Day because of Trump. What do you mean? Me? Like Flag Day only for Trump? What? No way, dude. I've always liked Flag Day. I've always loved Flag Day, okay? I've always loved it. It was always my favorite holiday ever. What do you mean? It's not just because of Trump. Nuh-uh. Nuh-uh. Oh my god, these kids these days. I can't believe Gaethje won. I mean, like, I joked with my friend like that this is the only chance that Gaethje has because Topuria is just went through a massive divorce and his like personal life has been in a huge problem for him. So he probably didn't get to train as much, just because of like all that stuff. So now here he is, um, and so it's just funny to me. Like, I mean, Gaethje had a good fight. Okay, he did well, right? Hi, Michelle. It was just like Tapourier obviously didn't have the tank. He threw in the towel in the fourth, which is wild. So obviously he wasn't training as hard, right? He wasn't training as hard as he could for it. And then on top of that, Gaethje, um, it was really weird. The faking the single leg takedown when you knew that he wasn't going to try to take it to the ground was very odd. I didn't get that. Tapourier, when he got him down, Tapourier had several chances to finish. If his BJJ was on point and it wasn't, so couldn't finish it. And Gaethje had a couple chances. He had an anaconda possibility before, and he couldn't finish it. So I thought it was just like a really sloppy fight in general. I thought there was just a big sloppy fight. I was shocked that he had such a chance at it. I thought that Gaethje had no chance at winning. So yeah, yeah, but there it is. Yeah, I couldn't believe it happened, but it did. Oh yeah, Michelle. I mean, that's the thing is I watch all of these. Like I watch UFC all the time. I don't. The cringe part is the people that are just watching it just because of Trump. Everyone's watching it because of Trump. So it's very odd to me. They're basically watching it just because it's Trump's birthday party, and so it's pretty obvious to me that people like they don't watch and follow it at all. Um, but whatever. Yeah, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle. I love it being like, yeah, I'm actually a huge flag. I am a big Flag Day guy, and he ruined it for me. Like, imagine that. I love that idea. Being like, yeah, it's actually, yeah, I do love Flag Day, and Trump ruined it for me. That would be funny. Exactly, Ghostbusters. Like, dude, these guys completely. It's so funny how entwined they brought politics into this thing, right? Considering that these are the same guys that like just freaked out when Colin Kaepernick dared to like kneel once. You know what I mean? Like that kneeling was too far political inside of a sporting event. That was too much. But now these guys are like just lining up to get Trump off, during this event, and everyone's just like, "Oh, this is great. We're just having fun, dude. We're just having fun." You're like, "What? What?" Guys, I think I'm gonna try a different angle on this. I wonder if I could go low. This is like too high. I wonder if I could go lower on this. We're just gonna chill and hang out tonight, guys. I don't really want to do anything big. Yeah, dude, I was bummed. Like, I hated the Pereira stoppage. I don't know. I thought that I thought Pereira could have recovered. Dude, I hate, honestly. I know that they used to not have decisions and stoppages, and it kind of like slowed down the game. But I actually hate the fact that there's any stoppages at all. Like I feel like I hate the stand-ups. I agree with Joe Rogan on that one. The stand-ups are cringe, and I feel like any type of stoppage is they should go. It's literally it's Perry Peloton's like chance to be triple belt. Like give him the chance. Like if he wants to go to hell and back in order to get it, then that's up to him. He should be able to do that, not some ref, you know. So that's just me though. I don't know. I'm weird. I'm weird. I'm weird. All these like people that were watching just because of Trump though, it felt a little weird to me, but whatever. It was I it's one of those things where like the production value of the UFC is always really good. They always do a good job at that. They always hire like good people, so it's always like good. Like objectively, UFC at the Sphere was way better. I mean, it just objectively it just was. But that's me. I don't know. People, I guess they could say otherwise, but that was it's pretty obvious that was a lot better. What do you got? MB, I wonder if there's like just slightly up angle. Probably is worse, huh? Probably worse. Because like down is probably better than up, huh? But dude, I'm so frustrated. Like that guy making that cringe thing about like Michelle Obama being a man. Like it's like, dude, what the hell, dude? And Joe Rogan's just sitting there lapping it up. Thinks it's so funny. Like, bro, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you actually doing? How is that funny? Like, how is that okay? How is any of that okay? They just don't care, man. Nobody cares about it's just boring. It's very childish. Okay. All right, thanks, MP. Oh my god, Ghostbusters. Oh my god, we're going to have to do a fashion review. We're going to have to. Hi Ness, how's it going? We're going to have to do a fashion review, guys. It was atrocious. All of those guys had just awful looking ties and everything looked really bad. It was so embarrassing, guys. No, his mom didn't dress him. That's the problem. No woman would do that to anyone. That's what they did was. Here we go. Let's see. I found it. Okay. Oh my god. I even made a screenshot of it like during it, and I was like, "What is going on?" Okay. All of them actually had the same problems. Okay? They all had the same problems. Okay? They're all having the same problems, every single one of them. What's happening is that it all starts right here. So this is a widespread. It's not not a full spread collar, but it's a wider spread. So what the idea is that in a wider spread knot, in a wider spread collar, you actually want a thicker knot in order to fill that space. So what happens is people tie thicker knots into that, but what they did was just a double Windsor. And that's too thick, okay? A double Windsor knot is comically large, and the other guys had the same problem. They all went with the double Windsor knot because Trump has a double Windsor knot. So that's the problem. And basically what that means is that the tie length is really short unless you start the tie really high up and you have a lot of length in the tie. And so they all had the same problem. Their collars were too widespread. They tied too thick of a knot. They ran out of tie material, so therefore the tie couldn't hit his belly button. And they all have like kind of a big of a gut here, and so it looks comically stupid. Yeah, half Windsor is better, but I mean honestly, a four in hands is probably a better one. That's like the easiest one to go with. I like the four in hands. Um, a half Windsor. People, this is it. People are gonna tell you, in beauty, symmetry. It's all about symmetry, but in actuality, having some asymmetry in your dress looks good. It looks good. You want some asymmetry because it gives you some zhuzh, it gives you some angles, it gives you some looks from different stuff, and it looks good. So you want it to come down. Um, having some type of crookedness in your tie is actually okay. But yeah, his shirt doesn't even fit him, so because he can't buckle the top knot here. So that means that his spread is larger than it is. So then his tie is larger than it needs to be. Tie knot is larger than it needs to be. It's not even tight. It's not even. He needs to tie it, like actually tie it. Okay, like and cinch it down a little bit. He didn't even do that. It just looks like a joke. And like to wear the same color suit jacket and tie, it looks so stupid, guys. I mean, come on, man. Like I think it's such a joke. Um, you only do this for like all black. If you're in a black tie, which is with a tuxedo, black on black, or for a funeral with a black suit, black tie, a white shirt. That's what it is. He's 5'8", Ruben. He's not 4'11". Yeah, he's actually just as tall as I am, which is interesting. He has a huge gut on him though. And obviously like, dude, Trump looked awful. Um Dana looked awful. Like Dana needs to go back on cycle, bro. He needs to like start working out again. He looks so overweight. Trump looks worse by the day. I don't understand how that's even possible. Um, it's embarrassing, dude. I would be embarrassed if I was these guys. That's just me though. That's just me though. Oh, did he looked awful? I mean, he came out without a hat on and immediately put his hat on and then just like went to bed. I don't know. It's crazy. Um, I mean, he doesn't like Rogan doesn't. He's on. Yeah, he has inflammation in the gut. They're sore. Thank you, Ness. They're very sore. Thank you, Francois. Thank you. um, it's just embarrassing, man. It's just embarrassing having these guys just bloviate and like just they're like, what are you proud of, bro? Like, what are you possibly proud of? I've and like the fact that like Trump got this gigantic walkout, he super long, super like he walked from like another building over. It was insane. And I'm like, what is he doing? Like, why are you taking such a big walkout, man? It's so embarrassing. Um, sure, for Rogan, yeah, I can, yeah. I mean, I can I can see why Rogan has an audience, right? I think I can see why Rogan does. Um I don't see why he has it anymore, but I could see why he had it. Yeah, the production value, like I was like, it really makes me mad to see the White House used as a commercial prop for for money, for private profits. Like it actually really bothers me. There shouldn't be ads with the White House. as the prop. Like, that doesn't make any sense. No, Dean, I didn't. Hey, good morning, F1. Like, it just shouldn't be that case. Like, you shouldn't have the White House being used as a prop. The president of the United States shouldn't be doing ads for a company to make that company money. Like, I mean, this is like self-evident, dude. Like, how could this not be something that everyone understands? I don't think, Ruben, I don't know if they're entertaining now. The emoluments clause. I mean, yeah, Hazel, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. That the fact that people think that yeah, yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, but it's also like, what even is it anymore? Like, the amount of just people that are in my comments and stuff being like, bro, just lighten up. Come on, stop being a hater, you know? And I hope that Democrats like really end this self-hatred loop that we do to one another when like Democrat on Democrat crime when something happens. People are so willing to throw another Dem under the bus. And Republicans just never do that. Republicans just constantly just say, "Oh, come on, give it a break, you know? Who cares?" And Republicans go out of their way to find the best possible and best best faith effort for the Republican, their fellow Republican, to get them out of a jam. And I feel like Democrats do the opposite. Democrats, I can't wait to be like, there it is. There, I knew it. I knew it. There, you were holding the mask the entire time, but now I really understand who you are. You know, and you're like, why? Like, what? They're like, see, it's like, for what issue? You know, there's all these like wedge issues that Democrats use against one another. For what reason? Like, what have we gotten out of it? You know, the Republicans are really good at just going with the flow and keeping their eyes on. It's like, in their minds, it's like a rally 24/7 to support their guy. And versus Democrats, it feels like everyone gets their freaking analytics out and everyone has a microscope over the Democratic politicians and they're like, let's pick and prod here and we'll try to figure out where we can really give it to that person and really hold them accountable. And it's not even that like Democrats should self-police, right? We should have some type of mechanism where we're holding people accountable. But I don't know. It just feels like it just feels like what happens is that there's a lot of people in the Democratic media that you just wouldn't want to hang out with. I don't know how to put it other than that. They're just like they are just really negative people that they're not really fighting for anything bigger than themselves. They aren't really contributing to anything bigger than themselves. They're not like using their platform to build into something bigger than themselves. And it just is this spiteful, negative, downward spiral. So like I feel like we as people on the left have to just like look at that and be like, bro, this person's just never happy. And they're never going to be happy until what? They become king or what happens. So like I don't know. I feel like we have to just be a little bit easier on one another. But in order to do that, you have to be like, okay, these people that are just negative no matter what, we can like just push these people to a side and just kind of like move and focus on us, you know? I don't know. I don't know. That's how I feel. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I'm putting out a bunch of stuff. Yeah, exactly, Hazel. Like stuff like that where, oh, thank you, Ghostbusters. Thanks for the gift. Thank you, Ness. Hi, Helen. No, it's okay. I just got on. I just got on. So I don't know. Okay. I am curious about doing a reaction to my own video. So I'm thinking about like where are the views going? How are like all the videos, all the analytics for this stuff's been crazy. The last like look at this. It's like just out of nowhere. And it's because of the algorithm being pushing my the Kent Hovind debate video out of nowhere. This last like 3 or 4 days, it's just crazy. Everyone that's like searching Kent Hovind or Kent Hovind debate has been clicking on my video. So I'm getting like 100 subscribers a day, which is wild because most days I was getting like 0 or 1 maybe. So I'm going to try to lean more into the debate content. I put out the CRISPR unethical debate. Hey, thank you. Cool, man. You like it? You like it, Noamus? Nice. Yeah, so I spun out my 1v1 debate. So I wanted to like put this out. Boom, boom. So this is this. This is this. And then this has actually been doing pretty well, I thought. It would be huge for me if you guys can go to my page. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. My link's in my profile. And then go to the video and then like and watch it to the end. I know it's like an hour and 20 minutes, or like put it on in the background somewhere when you're sleeping. That would be huge for me, just because then it'd be pushed in the algorithm and it would be amazing. I'd really appreciate that. Oh, okay. Do you like these? Cool. No Amos streams. Yeah, I'm trying to yeah, I'm not trying to I'm not compromising anymore. You know, before I had to kind of pick TikTok or YT, and I'm just like not compromising anymore, and I'm going in on both. So, but yeah, 13 views in 5 hours is actually pretty good for this. Yeah, I always do. I think I'm actually in consideration right now for monetization. I actually just put in my application. So I'm getting reviewed now, and I need some like they basically need to yeah, they need to. Yeah, no, Amos, if you could do that on my YT, I would genuinely appreciate and love that so much. There's actually even a there's some playlists that you could put. That'd be amazing. Oh, can't really see my graphs. Oh, this? Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is gonna be hard to see. Oh, nice. Oh, Fury Fatal. Thank you so much. Moderator, mute his mic. Saw your debate against that creationist dude. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Fury Fatal. Thank you. Um, thank you. I appreciate you, brother. So yeah. So I put this out. I'm gonna be trying to put out like one quality YouTube video a day. That's like my goal right now. So one quality YouTube video a day. I'm going to try different lengths. I'm going to try some like 15, 20-minute ones, some 40-minute ones, some hour-long ones, that kind of stuff. Oh, cool. No, Amos. Yeah. Okay. Actually, that's not working. This isn't working. But yeah, I wanted to do this is my old YouTube channel. It's an hour and 10 minutes. What do you guys think? This is my old debate on the peer review. You can still see my power blocks right there in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. That's funny. Oh, thank you. Wait, glow up? Oh, dude, I was like super obese here. I am like XXL. There you go. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, so Noam streams, there's basically on my YouTube, if you go to here, the show, there's just like a playlist of all my shows. Playlist. And then there's 156 Dr. Greg Show live, updated every day. So if you just like went to that and then pushed this right here and then just watched all 156 episodes. Need to hear me. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. So that would be amazing. I updated the banner too. I love this one. Relentless, correct. We don't defend the truth. We advance it. I love that. I don't know if that's cringe. I don't know if it's like middle school cringe or if it's actually cool. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So, here we go. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, whatever. I mean, whatever you need to do, that'd be cool. I mean, if you want to, that'd be cool. Okay. Okay. All right. So, but yeah, this is my most popular video on my old channel. So I wanted to like react to it. It says 5,000 views and my next one was only 375. So it's like, yeah. Dude, this is a cool chat. This is a cool chat with Frank and I. Frank actually comes on in chat a lot, and we talk about things all the time. And we actually had a debate here where it was like about whether or not viruses are living. Honestly, I thought that this was a really interesting discussion. Like we actually went into the original discussion, the academics that were actually making this argument and actually read the papers and talked about it. So I felt like it was actually a really good thing, dude. This I'm telling you guys. This is the video that genuinely like blackpilled me. I was so proud to do this because this is the Inflation Reduction Act video that I was so proud nobody was like actually talking about what was actually happening.
Climate change bill that's ever been passed in the history of the United States just passed the Senate today and is going to be signed by President Biden very soon. This is gigantic legislation. Let's go through it. So
real voice, guys. What is going on with my mic? Oh my gosh, what is going on? Why am I sick? I think I have to be sick. What is real voice, guys? Dude, I was like, there's so many good things in the Inflation Reduction Act, and I'm going through and talking about it.
First off, just to put in perspective on how big this bill is, this act, the Inflation Reduction Act, is 4,933% of the annual Department of Energy budget. This is way bigger than anything that has ever been passed, with the $370 billion from this act, plus the $148 billion that's from the infrastructure bill. We're investing heavily into solutions for climate change and the technology that's needed in the 21st century. And
why isn't anyone talking about this? This guy's making great points. Dang, this is incredible. This is really good content.
Infrastructure bill alone, we have $65 billion going for clean energy and grid investments, $7.5 billion to national network of charging stations for electronic vehicles, $55 billion to expand access to clean drinking water, $21 billion to clean up Superfund and brown sites. This is huge funding compared to the normal $7.5 billion that the DOE normally gets every year. We have to spend these massive amounts of money in order to make the investments and the infrastructure needed in order to transition away from fossil fuels. The number one thing people ask me as a scientist going on to panels and interviews is, why aren't we actually investing in doing anything about climate change? And the fact is that we are. We have tons of new technologies and research that's happening at the academic and small scale level, but we need these massive billion-dollar level investments in order to scale the technologies up so that they can actually be used at a national level.
Dang, this guy's great. This is the content I want to see. What's going on? Why isn't this guy everywhere? What's going on? And now we're going to go point by point talking about all the breakdowns in the energy cost.
Used clean vehicles, and the electric vehicles are going. Things can be reused, and
this is incredible. Point by point, talking about where all the carbonized, where all the billions of dollars is heading.
Pollution on emissions. So these are, cow farms, for example, will have a lot of emissions that are related to them, and farms just in general. They actually have a lot.
I mean, this is like what, 2000? This is 3 years ago, guys. 2022. This isn't like this isn't even that long ago. I was still gray-haired then. Okay. No, not even. I was living in Riverside, guys. This is like me the last year before my my PhD, before I stopped doing this just because to focus on my stuff.
Land. It's a lot of for offshore oil drilling. We use 2.3 billion.
And then I actually did a critique. I looked at the critiques of the IRA and what people were talking about, and they were basically critiquing the oil, the increase in offshore drilling.
Oil drilling. It's even a higher percentage hopefully we can get some tangible things through and the ball rolling on these issues. Nathan Robinson continued renewable technology.
I don't know what is wrong with my voice. It sounds so nasally. I'm sounding up here. Oh man. Look at the Inflation Reduction Act. Look at that, guys. 30 to 40% reduction in CO2, like greenhouse emissions. That's incredible.
And yet they can't recognize
Okay.
it's an absurdity.
I was spitting hard here. This is like the point where I was like really going for it here.
I think we don't have time to wait. I'm so sick of all these people, like Nathan Robinson and everyone on Twitter downplaying this stuff. They're supposedly taking it so seriously, and yet they can't recognize the biggest climate change bill and infrastructure and investment and technology scale up that's ever been in existence in the United States. If they can't recognize that, do they really care about this issue?
Bars, dude. Bars, bro. Like, what am I? Yeah, I feel the same way still. I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
Do they really think that this is some type of handout to the fossil fuel industry? Like everything that we went through, all the billions of dollars, all those projects and stuff, are those all are those all cutouts for the fossil fuel industry?
No way.
That doesn't make any sense. We don't have time, okay? We don't have time to wait for the perfect bill that Nathan Robinson wants to pass, or skeptics of this bill. Cynics of this bill, I should say. Because I don't think that there would be any bill that could be passed to make people happy.
True.
But every single scientist that I know, every single engineer that I know, every single climate scientist that I know is very happy about this bill.
True.
It's only these people online that don't dedicate their lives to this issue that are actually faking the most outrage on this. Every single person that's dedicated their life to this issue, they're celebrating this bill. And I'm sick and tired of reading pieces like this that can't recognize any progress that has been made. It's a start. I love that. I love that. Like, we haven't been fucking working on this stuff.
Damn.
How about you cover the technologies and the breakthroughs and the things and the progress that we have made? That's why nobody does. Nobody does, because it's easy. It's easy to be a cynic. It's easy to be a doomer on this issue. It's easy to say that nothing's happening, that Biden hasn't done anything on this issue because it's not all fixed. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. That's not how the world works. So we're not going to have a benevolent dictator that comes down and just waves a magic wand and fixes this issue. We have to make progress by moving forward. If you don't want to move forward, then that's fine. But don't say that you care about this issue. Don't belittle the accomplishments of people that have been working on this issue, that dedicated their lives to this issue. It's a fucking joke. If you actually want to, if you care about this issue, if you care about climate change, if you care about humans impacting the environment negatively, it is a good time to celebrate. We can celebrate those. We can celebrate the wins. We can look and see that there's a problem that isn't fixed yet, but we have made progress on that. And you know what happens is that when we go to the next election, you say, hey, what are we doing more on this road? Let's go down this road more rather than starting all anew. and saying, "Oh, I wish we hadn't passed anything."
True.
People are so used to taking losses on this, taking loss after loss after loss, that they don't care about making another loss. I do. We don't have time. Humans don't have time in order to wait for a perfect bill to pass the Senate. We have to take action. We have to invest. If you actually care about these issues, if you actually want to know what is going on in science and in technology that is actually going to break through this log jam and actually help solve the problems of the 21st century, that's what this channel is about. I don't think anyone else is actually covering this stuff. I don't think anyone actually cares. I think maybe people do care. I hope you care. But I'm sick of these people. I'm sick of dedicating my life to an issue and having people undermine any type of progress that we've made. It's hard enough. It's hard enough as a scientist that you know that, yeah, you didn't solve the world. You didn't solve the problem. You didn't solve the entire the biggest problem. I mean, global climate change is probably the biggest problem that humans have ever faced in the history of the world. I mean, and you're not going to solve it with one breakthrough, right? But you just know in the back of your head that, hey, maybe we've made progress. Maybe we have. And then you see nobody in the media talking about it. You see maybe a science press article talk about it. Maybe. But nobody actually cares. And then you see all of these people so negative about the climate change, so doomer about this issue constantly. They're so doomer about this. We never make progress. And then a bill passes that is progress. You'd think that they'd want to be happy. You would think that people would want to see some progress being made. But no, they continue down this doomer road. They continue down this stuff. Because it's easy. It's easy to get the clicks. It's easy to get the likes, because you can't be doomer enough about this issue. If you're more and more doomer, that the more and more you know, right? The more and more you know about all the problems. We got to make progress. I'm sick of not making progress. This is a huge progress. This is a huge step forward. If you actually want to follow the breakthroughs in science,
Man, I love, like, it was genuinely such a doom black pill moment, like working and dedicating my life to an issue and then seeing it pass, the biggest bill ever, and then nobody even talking about it during the election. That was like the biggest, like, mind melt for me in my entire life. And yeah, this is from 2022, 3 years ago. The reviews were good. People were nice about it. Glad to see you get so passionate at the end. Good to see someone who is speaking with urgency and understands the necessity of compromise. Thanks to the breakdown of this bill, I'm definitely excited about it passing and agree we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Hate to see the cars idle. I also hate wasted renewables. Any new grants for the grid scale? I'm going to use this for stream content. Yeah. Yeah. It was, but yeah, this was, I mean, but someone asked, would I be proud? Oh, wait, is this man related to you? Yeah. Yeah, this is my old, this is the peer review. This is my old YouTube channel. So basically, when I first made this, it was on a different YouTube Google account, and I put it on when I put this on my Dr. Greg Show stuff on my personal one because it was just such a pain in the butt having a separate Google account for everything. But yeah, I mean, but basically I talked about this issue, and then I went and talked with like some of the biggest conservatives ever in terms of the bill, talking about it. Lecture fan, he's actually, Fabian Liberty actually still goes on Prime Kai's panels. He's like still there, and he's still we talk, like he's always there. Rob Noor has gone on, and he's huge now. He's actually streaming full time with the Crucible people, and he's like even bigger now. Lecture fan, he used to be the biggest Republican on Twitch, but I don't know what he's doing now or where he is. So, but yeah, there's but yeah, it's honestly the big, like the, yeah. Wait, oh, okay. Wait, what? I mean, if my hair, yeah, my hair was just long, you know? Oh my gosh, I was like man bunnying it here. I was in oh my gosh, how funny. This is me on President Sunday's channel.
This gets me into my favorite graph.
I was like a man bun stage right there. It definitely was. It's really interesting, like trying to contact, and oh my gosh, guys, I'm so overweight here. Look at this. Look how pudgy my face is. I don't know if I would be. I'm proud that I started this. I'm proud that I'm proud that I like started down this journey. This is my first thing. This was actually, or was it
They
this?
knew they had to mass produce this thing in 2020, so they designed it specific.
This wasn't my first video though. This was actually my first video. This right here is November 2020, and I was
a serious thing. I mean,
yeah, this is. I wanted to call the show Catalyst because I wanted to talk about. This is what, by the way, what I wore every day to grad school. So I just basically wore like what was on my and I just wanted to dress up and talk about this. But yeah, November 2020 is when I started science communication on the internet. This is episode 1.
And so you seclude them, you give them a genetic bottleneck event where a lot of them die, and there's not that many genomes in there. You lack the diversity, and I mean, especially with things like trophic cascades that we were talking about last week, where you take out one thing and.
But I didn't know if I wanted to do a weekly thing. I don't know if these are like conversations that I had with anti-vaxxers. This person is actually, yeah, the boutonniere, yeah, Ghostbusters.
Because they knew they had to mass
you know what's
produce
funny
this
is that it's. I mean, I really haven't changed a lot at all. In so much, even though the stuff that I'm saying, I can see that I'm saying the same stuff. This guy, one of these guys, is actually, he's been back on. We actually had him as a guest like a month ago, and we were talking about the same thing. This is a 2-hour conversation where I talked about, I mean, you guys will get, I was like, where do you get your news? Like, that was the first thing. I was like, where do you get your news? He goes to Hacker News, and then we talked about the phylogenetics of, it's the same websites, guys. I mean, it's the exact same thing. Part of it is like, people ask me like, how do you know so much of the stuff? I'm like, bro, I've been talking about the exact same stuff for 6 years. So it's not like I am like treading new ground here.
Become informed and try to do since this all started. And
I had like, I didn't know about lighting or anything yet. So I put like this, there's this I just had this like room divider behind me, you know, so that I could like go in the garage, and it didn't.
When, you know, even if there's reduced spread on unvaccinated people.
But yeah, this is, gosh, guys, this is August 2021. So we just like came out. The vaccine had been out for what, 8 months at that point. Talking about viruses, you know what I mean? Like it's wild, dude. Talking about shedding, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's I know, Michelle, isn't it crazy? I would be like, I am proud of. I'm proud of like taking time off when I needed to for my PhD and like stepping away. You know, like in a weird way, this kind of stuff is addicting as a content creator because you get positive affirmation. Like the rest of your life can kind of like be falling apart, and you could like do content online for like clicks and likes, and it's kind of addicting in that point. So I'm actually happy that I kind of like stepped away and focused on my PhD to finish it, because it was like a hard final year, you know, to really finish it. So yeah, but I am this is cool. This was actually, people always ask me about philosophy of science. This is actually, so one of the guys, the top left, Bwin, he wanted to do a full philosophy of science class. So bottom right, this is like Homozygote, one of my friends from science communication. In the top right, I forget who this is. But we went through a whole philosophy of science class where we like read things, and you can see my rack, my home gym in the background. So, it was interesting, like going through all the philosophy of science, and I liked it, and it was fun. But yeah, I didn't put out that many videos. You know, I just didn't put out that many videos, I guess. My live streams, we did more live streams, and I mean, this is my last stream, guys. This is my last stream 2 years ago, was talking about SARS-CoV-2
what would
orange.
have to have happened. So you would have to have had like guys, like it's a humiliation ritual. That's what I'm doing. Like, you don't understand. Like this, like what I'm doing right now is a humiliation ritual where I am literally speaking into the same microphone about the exact same things over and over and over again. It's like, it is some insanity. But you know what? But guys, this right here, you can see the chat. Okay, you can see the chat on the right. Okay, you can't actually. There's nobody in chat. There's nobody in chat. I am literally creating this thing. I'm creating you've probably seen this infographic. I'm creating it right now. You know, and I'm reviewing stuff, and this had just come out. I'm reviewing something like the Congress that just came. There doesn't.
Bwin just comes into chat, guys. 3 hours in, and there's 3 chat messages. What are you doing, Greg? Nice. All learning is storytelling. That's it. Over 4 hours, and there's 3 chat messages. So, like, when I used to tell you guys, oh yeah, and I was a professor at this time too. So I'm actually taking and I'm going over my, and because I was like, oh, what I'll do is I'll spin out my my presentation, and I'll make it into a video. And so that's what I'm doing right now. So I just did 3 hours of making this infographic, and now I'm going to like record a YouTube video that I'm going to spin out, and I just never made it into a video, and I never put it in there. And
A different type of mammalian reservoir, like a rodent.
so I'm basically practicing my my class that I'm about to do, and this is before the outbreak. I'm basically explaining where viruses come from, why zoonotic spillover events happen, what it means, why it happens, that kind of stuff. The different types of coronaviruses that exist
in China, to actually see the geographic range of these bats, because bats, they are, and as we can see here, it's pretty nuts. There's up to 23 different species all in one space, geographically. It's across. So these populations of bats are linked together, not like, from one side of the map to the other. Bats, they have shorter wings. They're not doing these crazy migrations. They'll, go from one.
And then I was like doing some analogies. So basically talking about like genetic sequencing of them, different types of mutations that are having. I mean, this is an upper division microbiology class using the same graph we were just doing. This is, guys, where's this from? Where's this from? Look at that. Look at that. That's Warraby 2022. This is Picard 2022. Like we just did this. I was a professor for 1 quarter of microbiology at UC Riverside. I was a lecturer, and then basically I was like, oh yeah, I'll do, and then I put in that presentation in there too. Oh, and then I took that DNI report that came out, that fake stuff that came out that the Republicans quote unquote leaked, and I put that in here. So I literally put into here, like, this is where the misinformation is coming from. This is how you actually spot misinformation, that kind of thing. I was actually like, I really put a lot of time and effort into my old stuff, and I only streamed like 2 times a week, but I really did try to push stuff in. By the way, there was 4 messages at 3 hours. Not a single additional chat message for the other 3 hours. So I'm telling you guys, when I used to stream all by myself for 5 hours a night and have 0 people watching, I'm not joking. Like there's literally video evidence of this. I know, Michelle. Yeah, I am relentless. I am very stubborn. I don't know what it's a sickness. It's a sickness. It's probably not healthy. It's probably not healthy. Look at, the science behind that Wuhan outbreak, phylogenetics of SARS-CoV-2. Like, we're just like going into all these different things. We used to do a weekly thing with we called it the Ministry of Science, where it was like 4 people, and we all had genetics or biology backgrounds talking about it, and we used to kind of like have someone on and talk about what was going on. We had like pretty cool, honestly, really fun discussion every week. Yeah, but that was, but then I basically had these weekly discussions with Ministry of Science, and then I put out my own video and my old live streams. It was like, yeah, but there it is. Here's me again. Live recording stream. So basically my idea here was like, I'm going to live stream and then I'm going to record a YT video while I do this. And then I cut out the videos, kind of like what I'm doing now, but a little bit differently. So yeah, I mean, it's very similar. Tardigrades, classic. Oh, thank you, Erwan. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, that's where it is. I think like I would be really proud of the fact that I got back into it. Like I didn't after we moved in, I didn't like start up science communication again. It was actually my friend. She was talking about on her jujitsu podcast about on her jujitsu page talking about how because they had immigration problems because of the ice raids and everything like that because of you know, in April last year, all of the ice raids and stuff. And she was like, she made a tweet talking about Night Sydney. She made a comment about like, thank you for anyone that's doing anything that they can in order to fight back against this. And I was like, dang, like, what am I doing then? You know what I mean? What am I doing to fight back against this stuff? I can't, like, I personally can't fight back with, you know, the lawyer stuff and the, hey, Justin, how's it going, man? I can't fight back with the immigration stuff, but what I can do and what I know how to do is getting my science communication stuff back. And I plugged in the mic. I had all the equipment, right, from my old stuff. And then that's when I started streaming on TikTok. And my first stream, guys, we just went through, I literally streamed to myself most of the time with 0. For 5 minutes, I had one person. I come to TikTok and I had over 100 people in the first stream that I had. You know, and I was just like, what is going on? And I streamed for like 6 hours that night because it was so much fun actually talking to people, actually having people in chat. I was like, this is incredible. So that's how I got back into it. And I never thought that I would still be doing it so much. I'd never thought, especially after getting laid off, that I would be like really pushing this forward into it. I also never thought I would live in a society where, you know, all this stuff would be questioned again. And it really is about like what kind of world do you want to live in, you know? And I just refuse to give up. So they're stuck with me. Especially after getting me fired. Like I'm really mad and I'm really pissed off about it. So yeah, I'm willing to keep going, you know. 46 videos, 7,800 views. I have like way more videos now. Where is, let's see, where is oh, that was in the description. Here. 873 videos, 320,000 views. That's crazy. Yeah, it completely changed my content. I mean, a lot of these videos are shorts, you know, so they're a lot different. Completely different. Yeah, October 28th, 2020. So, yeah, man. We don't really have time to react to this video. I don't know. Maybe we could. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Do you want to go over the Haas debate? I don't have anything else planned. I wanted to do it anyway. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. So, let's do this. I spent so much time on this thumbnail. So much
human
time.
view, traditional human view. The mother contributes.
I knew that this
The
was
language of biology is evolution. It's crucial to understand that evolution happens within a population. Populations evolve. Natural selection happens on the individual.
so. Okay. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, so I am. So I saw myself at the time kind of like as like a science correspondent, similar to what I am now. At the time, I'm starting my science communication journey, and basically I'm on the internet looking to insert myself into scientific discussions. And I see on Twitter that Haas, who's like a huge like communist, and talking about the existence of DNA doesn't exist. Like DNA doesn't exist. It's not the basis of heredity. And I immediately was like, I had no idea. I had heard of Lysenkoism before this, but I really am going into this conversation really blind and just kind of like, well, I talk to anti-vaxxers constantly. I talk to people that I don't agree with constantly. I'm just going to throw myself into the fire, and I'm going to I'm going to go through this kind of blind. And I talk to him. I DM him on Twitter. He puts me into this, gives me this Discord link, and then immediately I am like in it. It was crazy fast. I couldn't believe how quickly it happened. I didn't have any time to get my earbuds in. I had like my regular, giant cans on, which I don't like because I don't like the look of them. It doesn't look good on camera, but that's how disheveled I was. I didn't even have time to put my earbuds in. And then I knew that this was a huge moment for me, and I knew that people were going to be searching for this because it was like a big thing for Haas to like debate a scientist or whatever. So I was so excited about getting this done, this landing, this big like breakthrough thing, that right afterwards I got elevated. What's happening right now is I'm like, oh shoot, I need to record my intro. I can't just put my put this out. I need to record an intro because I can't just like start off this thing where it's just like straight into conspiracy. I need to record kind of like, I was a really big fan of Lex Friedman at that time, and he does this like in the the beginning of his videos. He'll do like an intro, kind of introducing the subject, and I think it's really important that people understand, and that when they click this, which has a lot of disinformation on it, the first 10 seconds, I want it to be actual information that is true and correct, and that seeds the conversation. This is what it is. Exactly, Heather. I got elevated too early. I got way too, and so that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just stating it, and I'm like, I don't. So I want to make sure that this is known. I didn't do the highlight reel because I feel like clicking and editing down, a 1 minute summary of like the best gotchas isn't a good way of having his side watch the video as if that's a good faith conversation. So I really wanted to like save the scientific part and then kind of seed the conversation. So that's what this is.
The language of biology is evolution. It's crucial to understand that evolution happens within a population. Populations evolve. Natural selection happens on the individual. So when we kill off so many organisms, they're not able to evolve and adapt to these changing environments. We have to better understand evolution and natural selection. And these discussions about DNA and heredity is a very interesting topic for a future world. So thank you, Haas. Thanks for watching. What's your...
I'm thinking of like, so yeah, I don't know what it was or why I said that stuff, but it was just like me. Yeah, I sound so different. I don't know. It's the exact same mic, but I just have a completely different chain on it, and I don't really understand audio quality at that point to know like what I'm doing wrong. So yeah, that's what's happening. It's basically just like an RE20 with no good. Yeah. This is 4 years ago. So this is March 2022. So this is 1 year before the video that we were just watching.
Opinion on DNA, future world. So thank you, Haas. Thanks for watching. What's your opinion on DNA?
DNA does not satisfy the criterion of the concept of a gene.
Okay, so how would you define a gene then?
A gene is a unit of heredity.
Okay. So does DNA carry any genetic material?
No, there's nothing genetic about DNA.
Like, I don't understand. Like so far, like what does that even mean? There's no genetics in DNA. Like what is it even talking about?
Okay, interesting.
I,
Do
I,
you
I say interesting when I am like completely flabbergasted and I have no idea how to respond. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm I'm just like completely floored. I'm like, oh, okay.
think that like with DNA, you can express proteins from that ultimately?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So if I deliver like an organism some DNA and it expresses that DNA into a protein, we're in agreement on that, right?
DNA is mainly responsible for the encoding of proteins. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, because like in molecular biology, a lot of times that's where a lot of my knowledge comes from. Where I've been working in genetics and molecular biology for like 14 years, so in the lab, and a lot of times we will introduce or transform, which is like integrating into the genome a piece of DNA, and that DNA will give and encode a special ability that organism didn't have before.
What kind of organisms do you work with?
I'm a microbiologist, so I work with bacteria and yeast and algae, and I also have experience with plants as well.
I mean, what else would be the basis of heredity? You only need to transfer the DNA. Like that is the only thing that actually does go from one organism to the other. Like what else could it possibly be? Like it doesn't make any sense otherwise.
Okay, I think plants would be more interesting because it depends on the type of organism, but
By the way, he's saying he's talking about plants because of Lysenko. So Lysenkoism is this idea. So yeah, Lysenko is, if you don't know, he is. Yeah, this is it's tough, man. Lysenkoism is very tough. So um, Lysenkoism is a pseudoscientific political campaign led by Soviet biologist Lysenko against genetics and science-based agriculture in the mid-20th century, rejecting natural selection in favor of Lamarckism, as well as expanding upon the techniques of vernalization and grafting, which is true. And like Lamarck has been correct in like epigenetics, so it's not completely discredited, but how he went about it did cause plants to basically be responsible for a lot of the problems that were happening. More than 3,000 mainstream biologists were dismissed or imprisoned, and numerous scientists were executed in the Soviet campaign to suppress scientific opponents. Like when people talk about how Stalin suppressed and disappeared people that disagreed with him, they are specifically talking about this. They are talking about how he, because in order to support Lysenkoism, disappeared scientists, like because of this. The president of the Soviet Agriculture Academy, Nikolai Vavilov, who had been Lysenko's mentor but later denounced him, was sent to prison and died there while Soviet genetics research was effectively destroyed. Research and teaching in the fields of neurophysiology, cell biology, and other biological disciplines were harmed or banned. When you're banning fields of fields of science, that's never a good thing, guys. That's never a good thing. The government of the USSR supported the campaign, and Stalin personally edited a speech by Lysenko in a way that reflected his support for what would come to be known as Lysenkoism, despite his skepticism towards Lysenko's assertion that all science is class-based in nature. That's right. So they literally tried to use like communist, proletariat versus bourgeoisie, class-based politics, and they tried to apply it to genetics. Lysenko served as the director of the USSR's Lenin All-Union Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Other countries of the Eastern Bloc, including the People's Republic of Poland and Republic of Czechoslovakia and the German Democratic Republic, accepted Lysenkoism as the official new biology to varying degrees, as did the People's Republic of China for some years. Like Mao had this problem. Basically, Mao and Stalin all came to the conclusion that Lysenko was correct, and they basically cold shocked these plants and the plants weren't able to adapt in the winter, therefore causing this problem. Here we go. Here's the context. Here's the actual biology around it. In Mendelian genetics, the science of heredity developed into an experimentally based field of biology at the start of the 20th century through the work of Weismann, Morgan, and others, building on the rediscovered work of Mendel. They show that the characteristics of an organism are carried by inherited genes, which were located on chromosomes in each of the cell's nucleus. Genes can be affected by random changes, mutations, and can be shuffled and recombined during sexual reproduction and are otherwise passed on unchanged from parent to offspring. Beneficial changes can propagate through a population by natural selection or agriculture or by plant breeding. So, but do they know what that DNA, like the structure of DNA, and they know the nucleotides yet? No, of course, no, of course not. They don't know the structure of DNA. They think that DNA exists, but they don't know that it's the basis of heredity yet. Basically, they don't know if it's proteins. They don't know if it's DNA. They don't know what it is. Some Marxists, however, perceived a fissure between Marxism and Darwinism. Specifically, the issue is that while the, quote, struggle for survival, end quote, in Marxism applies to a social class as a whole, i.e. the class struggle, the struggle for survival in Darwinism is decided by individual random mutations. This was deemed as a liberal doctrine against the Marxist framework of, quote, immutable laws of history, end quote, and the spirit of collectivism. In contrast, Lamarckism proposed that an organism can somehow pass on characteristics that it had acquired during its lifetime to its offspring, implying that the changing the body can affect the genetic material in the germline. To these Marxists, a neo-Lamarckism was deemed more compatible with Marxist thought. The Marxist principle of Partinost, or party spirit, held that science is tied to class interests. Scientists had a duty to serve the working class. This caused scientific findings to be judged by their economic and political utility and allowed for questionable work. Marxist revolutionary Bukharin downplayed realistic interpretations of nature. He said that the science had to show how to manipulate natural phenomena to serve the interests of the proletarian class. Because genetics was linked to eugenics and social Darwinism, it was rejected as bourgeoisie, regardless of the evidence for it. So, again, just not taking any of the like physical, naturalistic understanding of the world, but in turn actually trying to adopt this proletariat versus bourgeoisie idea. And this kind of like is the hallmark of it, where they feel like you're by having these mutations, you have a destiny of this is what your life is going to be, or as an organism. In reality, it's not like that. Back to the Wikipedia, Marxist-Leninism, which became the official ideology of Stalin's USSR, incorporated Darwinian evolution as a foundational doctrine, providing a scientific basis for state atheism. Initially, the Lamarckian principle of inheritance of acquired traits was considered a legitimate part of evolutionary theory, and Darwin himself supported it. Although the Mendelian view had largely replaced Lamarckism in Western biology by 1925, it persisted in Soviet doctrine. Besides the fervent, quote, old style, end quote, Darwinism of Marx and Engels, which included elements of Lamarckism, two fallacious experiment results supported it in the USSR. This is the big points here. First, Pavlov, who discovered the conditional reflex, announced in 1923 that it can be inherited in mice, and his subsequent withdrawal of this claim was ignored by Soviet ideologists. Second, Maturin interpreted his work on plant breeding as proof of the inheritance of acquired traits, which is what I was talking to you before. So basically, instead of like they thought that you just take a plant and then exposed it to winter weather, kind of like putting it into a freezer for a little bit, now they were going to be forever immune to the cold, which isn't true, right? Second, Maturin advocated directed plant breeding by environmental control. Quote, "We cannot wait for favors for nature. We must wrest them from her." So basically, in the Soviet Union, Lysenko's claims, it goes on, and he basically, Lysenko's claims. In 1928, rejecting natural selection and Mendelian genetics, Lysenko claimed to have developed agricultural techniques which could have radically increased crop yields. These include vernalization, species transformation, inheritance of acquired characteristics, and vegetative hybridization. He claimed that in particular that vernalization, exposing wheat seeds to humidity and low temperature, could increase crop yield. He claimed further that he could transform one species into another through 2 to 4 years of autumn planting. This species transitioned, he claimed, to occur without the intermediate form. Let's see. Lysenko claimed that the concept of a gene was a, quote, bourgeoisie invention, end quote, and he denied the presence of, quote, any, quote, immortal substance of heredity, end quote, or, quote, clearly defined species, end quote, which he claimed belonged to Platonic metaphysics rather than strictly materialist Marxist science. Instead, he proposed a, quote, Marxist genetics, end quote, postulating an unlimited possibility of transformation of living organisms through environmental changes in the spirit of Marxian dialectical transformation, and in parallel to the party's program of creating the new Soviet man and subduing nature for his benefit. Lysenko refused to admit random mutations, stating that, quote, the science is the enemy of randomness, end quote. So just kind of like taking... Yeah, exactly. Hi, Darko. What's up, man? So I can't stretch my arms and make my kids' arms longer? I know, exactly, dude. So let's see. Do they talk about the what happens after it? The fall... At the end of 1952, the situation's changed. The newspapers published articles criticizing Lysenkoism. However, the return to regular genetics slowed down Khrushchev's time when Lysenko showed him the supposed success of experimental agricultural complex. It was once again forbidden to criticize Lysenkoism, though it was now possible to express different views, and the geneticists imprisoned under Stalin were released and rehabilitated posthumously. The ban was finally lifted in the 1960s, guys. 1925 to 1960s, they banned criticism of Lysenkoism. Lysenkoism was never dominant in the West, and during the 1960s, it increasingly has been seen as pseudoscience. Soviet scientists noticed the great advance in molecular biology, such as the characterization of DNA, and even holdout Lysenkoists were starting to accept DNA as the material basis of heredity, though they still rejected gene theory. So that's it. Pretty embarrassing. So basically, they just thought they rejected genetics and Darwinism, or Darwinian evolution, in terms of a more metaphysical idea of how one thing can transform into another over time. In scientific content, heredity was formulated as, quote, the property of the living body to demand certain environmental conditions and to react in a certain way to them. Like that, like what is the basis of heredity then? Maturin attempted to explain Lamarckian heredity by theorizing that some sort of heredity is present all throughout an organism which reacts to environmental influence. Like it's just there's nothing, they weren't able to show anything. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's so wild to me. It's like, what's the point, man? Why be so Is this the roots of epigenetics that they were talking about? Kind of. So, like, I mean, epigenetics, Lamarckian versus Darwinian evolution kind of is, yeah, it kind of is, but it's, yeah. Okay, guys. Well, let's go back to go back to it. So here is so that I didn't know this at the time. So I'm really going through this like for the first time, but I wanted to give you guys a primer to kind of like see what Haas is talking about, because I don't know what he's talking about, but let's go through it, you know?
For some organisms, alterations to DNA can have very direct effects because the organism isn't really that complex.
Not that complex.
I mean, I would say that the bacteria or yeast is just as evolved as we are. It's just evolved in a different way.
Yeah, it's evolved, but it's not as complex in terms of the way in which proteins actually function for the organism.
Exactly. Completely incorrect, right? I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point of the shared DNA that we have is literally the expression, systems that we have of DNA to RNA to proteins are conserved, and that's the whole point.
The proteins have a more direct function.
No, it's not.
Well, I mean, a lot of the DNA that we have in our bodies encodes for functions that are similar to the bacteria. Like over 50% of our DNA is similar to a banana, for example, and that.
I didn't know I was going to say that. That's so funny. That's so funny. I had no idea. There you go. I mean, I'm. It's so funny because my response is the exact same 4 years ago as it is today. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm like, that's the answer, and there it is. That's so funny. I did the banana fact too. That's so funny.
It's mostly just the DNA encoding, like the housekeeping functions of of us, of our organism and our genome and that kind of stuff.
So the way I see DNA is that DNA is just part of the process of the manufacturing of proteins, but it doesn't actually have any determinate effect on how these proteins are assembled together or how they actually work.
I can understand what you're talking about, because I think there's post-transcriptional. It's called I'm saying these words not to give jargon, just trying to give words for people if they want to look it up later. I'm trying to not define them as well as we go along, but it's called post-transcriptional modification, where the RNA is made from the DNA and then it's modified, and then even after the protein is made from the RNA, then you have post-translational modifications as well. And so there, for example, in our genomes, we only have around 22,000 genes, but we have, over 100,000 different proteins. So you're right in the fact that DNA is like one starting point of it. But, I
don't even know if it's the starting point, though, because it's like.
You were this patient this long ago, too. Wow. I mean, yeah, I think I'm being like very gracious here, trying to kind of explain him like his thing. I'm definitely not trying to do gotchas and stuff. I think, and still, I mean, genuinely, I do want him in this moment to see me as someone that is bouncing ideas off of him, rather than try to farm clips off of him. And I think that that's still the best way to go. I don't think that Haas is like, I mean, I guess he is, I don't know. The problem is like the fact that he's thinking that DNA doesn't exist is kind of like, it's a silly thing, right? It's kind of like one of those things where I'm more patient as someone, I'm more patient on issues that I feel like are less harmful to society. But as he is like a political leader in this space, so if he was advocating for, anti-vaccine rhetoric or something like that, I would definitely be more frustrated and on his back about it. But here, I feel like it's more of a philosophical thing. Yeah, this is me, 2002, so 4 years ago.
The chicken or the egg problem, like.
The spry young 35-year-old.
Where does DNA come from, and how is DNA determined?
Are you talking about like the origins of life, or are you just talking about kind of like in general?
Both. I think they're both related, actually.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, have you heard of like the RNA like theory of life and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, my problem with that is that we don't find RNA world still existing, and I'm going to be very skeptical of a theory which proposes a starting point when there's no traces of that starting point in the present, because that's usually.
I mean, it's so wild because literally there's been so much research since this point, and obviously like QT45 and all these like, you know, self-replicating RNAs. You know, we haven't done that breakthrough like stuff in order to find those super small self-replicating RNAs, but it's just so wild because it's how people can have that view, you know, and then all the evidence and all the science is always going to come on finding these things that he's talking about, finding these holes that we are better going to understand in science. And people that just say and abstain from new knowledge, they're never going to be the future. It's never going to be the future. You stay so calm when he isn't even open to listening. He's just wants to prove you wrong. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think I think it's tough. Like you have to realize though that I'm not talking to him. I am having the discussion with him, but I am speaking to his supporters and the people that like him, and I'm trying to present a view of science as being approachable and accountable and a path forward where they can say, hey, okay, there were answers here and he just didn't know them. And the fact that he didn't know that kind of stuff is a red flag. So I am kind of like, I'm trying to talk to his supporters here. So by me not giving him, by me helping him along and giving him, you know, jargon words to better explain his own positions, I'm talking to his supporters and saying, hey, like, don't worry about it. I can help you through, and I can be your person too.
How life works is that it's not a linear evolution of lower organisms to higher organisms. There's just branching trees of different organisms, and like, you know, like most of these like ancient organisms, in terms of their level of complexity, they still have relatives that still exist. You know, like how they say the cockroach is the oldest animal or whatever. Like it's kind of like that thing.
I think it's going to be hard to find still existing RNA from that RNA world hypothesis, right? Because RNA.
No, I'm saying like we don't find random RNA particles just in the wild in general. They don't have to.
Like, of course we do, guys. Of course, there's environmental DNA, there's environmental RNA. They constantly happens. Like they're literally DNA like is uptaken. Like natural transformations happen within bacteria. They evolve in order to take up environmental DNA that's just randomly there.
Be the same ones, but we should be able to find them still in the present, and we just don't. We don't see any. I think it's just kind of a dumb idea, to be honest.
Well, I mean, there's RNA viruses, of course.
Yeah, and that's why I'm also really skeptical of this claims about heredity, because we really don't even know what viruses are, where they come from, or how they even work. Because obviously viruses are themselves undergo evolution through organisms already, right? Without those organisms, could viruses exist? We don't know. Like,
oh, they're obligate pathogens, so no. I mean, that's of course they're evolved in order to do that. That's why they're not considered living. Exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, they're not considered living because viruses have to go into kind of like the DNA or RNA state before they're expressed into their kind of like floral body that we see in pictures and stuff.
They go into like a dormant state, I guess, kind of like a tree and a seed kind of.
I'm sorry, guys. I need to stop. I need to see what I am like going to say first, and then kind of like respond, because I'm going to give the same answer I did 4 years ago. How funny is that? Okay, I gotta ask. I gotta wait for my own response here.
Thing where they'll go and be transmitted through that stuff.
Yeah, but like, what role do they play in the evolution of organisms? We just don't know all these things.
It's actually it's a pretty big one. Actually, yeah. Viruses are a really big driver of biological evolution because it kind of pushes them.
Yeah, I know. It's just, but there's just so much we don't know about how any of that works or what it even means.
Interesting.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
I mean, I think that science is, you're always going to have like some way of, always having a question. There's always going to be some way of figuring out
I just have a hard time believing of a point of transition between a world of mechanical chemical interactions suddenly leaping into something like life. I think I like more the idea that the key to the anatomy of an ape is through the anatomy of man, which means something that is more advanced should teach us something that is less advanced, not the reverse.
What?
So we shouldn't try to assemble something more advanced from less advanced premises or something like that. Like we shouldn't try to ask how did a bunch of chemicals become life. We should ask what does life tell us about the nature of these chemicals.
We do. That's what science is. It's literally what science is.
I guess, do you see evolution kind of like as a ladder with like the humans on the top, or is it more of just kind of?
In a sense, actually, I do see humans on top.
Okay.
Obviously, for me, I see humans on top because humans are the only organism that inquires about the nature of its own being.
Yeah. What if I told you that, microbes are really integral for humans to do, for example, we're finding basically a gut microbiome in everyone, and that gut microbiome is really intricately involved with our immune response, and it's just like a lot of cells, man. Because if you look at if you counted all your human cells and you counted all your microbes within you and on your body, it's about 1 to 1.
Yeah,
isn't that
crazy? It's crazy. He's popping over everywhere. The fact that life and the chemical to life transition. Guys, what all life is a series of chemical reactions, right? All we are is a series of neurotransmitter ratios in our brains that creates consciousness, so it never stops. The idea of there's this mythical and then now all of a sudden there's a soul that evolves and now we have this thing that lives forever. That just doesn't exist. The reality is that humans aren't any different than any other organism, and the life that we have is tied to chemical reactions, not tied to some supernatural soul.
To me, the most advanced basically means, what does all of that mean? What does all of that culminate into? And then to me, that is basically humanity. All of that culminates into human beings.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess we are a product of the microbes, and that's within us. For example, we're finding genetic differences in the microbiomes of athletes versus people that that don't that aren't athletes. They have a distinct different microbiome.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Okay.
Well, what do you mean? Do they have a different microbiome because they're athletes, or do they have a different microbiome?
What came first, kind of thing? That's a great question, man.
Yeah.
I think what you're getting at is if you just took a non-athlete and put them, gave them those species that gave them that genetic diversity, would they then somehow?
If you take a non-athlete and they become an athlete, are they gonna see a change in their microbiome?
Maybe.
My hypothesis would be that it would, just because that you're changing your diet probably, and you're exercising, so you're going to be selecting for a gut microbe.
Yeah, I think all that shit in the gut and plays a really mysterious but very important but just not known part.
Not known
in us.
What are you talking about?
I heard the story that there was this surgery, the transfer of fecal matter. I don't know, you know that kind of surgery people have to do.
Fecal transplant.
Yeah. And it actually had someone who had male pattern baldness regrow their hair.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's really mysterious how that works.
Yeah. There's a huge gut-brain connection too that we're finding with basically how our microbiome does versus, and its connection with our brains right now as well. So microbiology is really expanding, and we're finding it with plants as well. So the plants have yeast and bacteria. Basically there's nitrogen-fixing bacteria that will bring down stuff in the atmosphere that will give the plants nitrates and stuff like that are going to be necessary for life. So we're finding more and more a bigger role for microbes just in general.
They're everywhere. It's a weird. it's a weird like downplaying of microbes that he has, and then also like a hierarchical way. But then he said that it wasn't, that they were just branching trees of life, which is what Lysenko had talked about before. I don't understand his ideology other than Western science bad and like Western dogmatism bad. You know, I don't get it.
Which is interesting. I guess, like how, like what would change your mind about DNA being the element of heredity in biology?
I'm like, can we just get this back on the trucks? I don't know this metaphysical kind of like supernatural stuff. I don't understand what you're talking about. Can we talk about like what we were supposed to talk about, please? That's what I'm saying right
now. I don't think there's any room for doubt that DNA is an element of heredity, because obviously it can prove paternity.
Okay.
Although I'm not
true. I mean, that is. I mean, how do you not? It's. I don't. Yeah.
Sure if it can prove paternity when you have like a relative, like a brother or something. I actually don't know about that with certainty, but I wouldn't surprise me if it was more accurate, right? So it can prove paternity. It obviously proves ancestry, right? When you have clusters of groups. So obviously DNA is heritable and plays a role in heredity. But I don't think that only DNA can be heritable.
I mean, it's frustrating because it's like he's right in an aspect of like epigenetics does exist, and there's like mass chromosome silencing that does happen, but like Lysenko wasn't talking about that at the time. He's a communist healing that doesn't believe in like Western science, so he believes in Lysenkoism, and that's like the basis for his ideology.
I mean, we are finding more and more that, you know, there's this thing, epigenetics, basically.
Oh my gosh!
How your genome is turned on or off, and we're finding more and more that it plays a bigger role and that it can be heritable. So, for example, like they did I read a study that was like they basically subjected mice to extreme heat, and and then their offspring had that same kind of like heat. It's called heat shock proteins, or proteins that are made in order to sustain high levels of heat.
And then there's also like the whole thing about biological atavism, right? Even DNAs can be rearranged, and dormant things can like
yeah, exactly, Darko. Yeah, irritable and plays a role in heritability. I know exactly. So that's the problem, man. It's like it's like at some point they're gonna say, oh well, that's the part of heredity, but at the end of the day, guys, like, you know, the DNA has to be there in order to be silenced or not through epigenetics. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can say in the manual, like, skip page 15 when you're, you know, when you're doing something, but like you could still not skip page 15. You could go back to page 15 if you need to. And epigenetics isn't permanent, you know? So having DNA there is still a big aspect of it.
Reawaken or whatever. So to me, it's like, but my problem is that this calls into question the very concept of a gene, you know?
Genes are
I mean, I can understand that, I guess, because, you know, we're talking about like a parent to child, but at the same time, like, you know, for example, we are apes, you know, biologically, and we have, you know, all the other mammals can make their own vitamin C for their immune system, and that's something that's really important, and that they can make their own vitamin C. But us being apes, we were eating such a high level of citrus that we basically didn't need to make vitamin C anymore. It was too expensive, you know, metabolically in order to do that. So we accumulated mutations in our vitamin C, and it's within us right now to be able to make vitamin C. But we just have that turned off because there's mutations that have basically turned off that gene. It's called a C.
Yeah, but
gene.
obviously, like to me, those mutations couldn't possibly just be random, you know?
So
you just said
that was the thing. That was the see, like now, just like how Lysenko was talking about, he doesn't believe in randomness, and it's like, well, again. So it's like it's not just random. They did happen randomly in the portion within that population, but that population they had to accrue, and you have that chance of breeding that bad mutation out. If it's you don't have to fix that mutation within that population necessarily.
you speculate or you
Yo,
think
what's
that
up,
it's
anti-fascist
because of
Rob?
our dietary change. So that would mean the mutation is non-random. So that means that our characteristics are not actually based on genes.
So you're getting into a really good point of this is the difference between evolution and natural selection. So evolution happens, the mutations that are at the basis of evolution are random. They're errors within DNA polymerase that are like 1 in a billion or whatever. But the process of natural selection is not random because basically the fitness of whatever organism is put on the backdrop of, being able to survive. So a number of different ways.
But it's kind of tautological, right? Like natural selection basically means that whatever characteristics allow an organism to survive will allow, but our organisms can obviously survive in various different ways. Like this same ecology can support a diversity of different organisms, which all survive in different ways within the same climactic and broad environmental conditions, right? So to me, my problem with neo-Darwinism is that I just find it tautological. It doesn't really explain why organisms are the way they are. It just kind of gives us a tautology that if they were not like this,
we can literally go like sequence the genome. Then we could look at proteomics, look at all the different types of proteins that exist. We could tie individual proteins to individual parts of the genome, and we can link them one to one. So the idea that we just don't have any idea, or that there's no basis that the proteins can't be linked to it. It's just so wild.
Wouldn't be. It gives us the tautology that everything the organism does is for the sake of its survival, right? But the key word there is actually its. So why is the thing the way it is, right? Because you take away that its part for its survival and you just say, oh, it's just the way it is because this is the only way for a thing in general to survive. Well, that's just not true. There's plenty of different organisms that survive in different ways. It's just that all of them have different conditions of survival based on what they already are.
Yeah, I guess I just see them as having niches and reproducing with one another and having a diversity in the genome, being able to actually withstand differences in the environment or other biological factors like viruses. Because we know biologically that organisms that have gone through a bottleneck period where a bunch of them have been killed off. Like, for example, like cheetahs are all basically like first cousins of one another. They're really genetically similar. You can actually take like a skin graft of any cheetah in the world and do a skin graft onto another cheetah. That's how similar they are. And we know that that's a bad thing, that the basis of those DNA changes not being there means that they're not able to survive a whole host of new problems that could arise. Would you agree with that?
Well, I actually don't know because to what extent are organisms be able to actually adapt to new environments and to new conditions?
Like the idea that like cheetahs somehow they're not bound to their DNA and that heredity, and they could just really want to fend off a virus, or really want to make a thicker coat. Just really, really want to. Oh, thank you. Thank you, R. Yeah, thank you.
Slowly, right? So they have to have some way of dealing with it. So this is a term called
I actually don't know because these environmental pressures can also serve as sources of external trauma, which can induce very sudden changes, probably. On the evolutionary timescale,
So basically, this is something that can be selected for through evolution. So this is a term called phenotypic elasticity, where organisms will have the ability to have a host of different abilities to actually respond to environmental or biological problems. So this is where you get different genome sizes, for example. You'll have within the same family of organisms, they're really closely related, but now a certain one is the genome size is double, triple, 10 times as big. And it's well, why would that be? It's well, maybe that organism, hypothesis being that organism is able to survive in an environment that has changing heat or changing virus pressures or any type of, it's called biotic, which is biological factors, and abiotic, which is the environment. So heat, water, all that kind of stuff.
To me, I think the question boils down to something very simple.
Okay.
Is there a broader will? I don't want to say this because it sounds like voodoo or whatever, but is there a broader will to life by organisms to actually subsist that is not simply determined by their external environs? Is it possible that when there's these sudden environmental changes, life finds a way, and all these kind of epigenetic changes can be induced. I think so. I think there has to be. I think I read somewhere that, like, mathematically, it is simply not possible for animals to have emerged from random mutations.
Oh my gosh, I don't. That's such like a ridiculous question. I mean, that's such I'm gonna see what my answer is, but
Yeah, I would argue it's just not random. It's like there are random mutations that happened, but at the same time, it's through natural selection that we actually get speciation in new species. So it happens. There's a funnel, kind of thing where it's pushing. The definition of evolution is the change of allele frequency over time. So you're going to have basically different mutations, different things being selected for at any given time, and it's just going to change. And it's just you change based off of the environment, biology,
and it's not random. Like it's like. Theoretically, okay, if I take this, like, how many ways can this thing go if I drop this? How many different ways? Theoretically, infinite, right? It could go an infinite amount of ways. It could go up this way, down this way, right, left, down this way, up where this, down this way, down this. Theoretically, right? It could go an infinite amount of directions. But what direction do we know it will go? Down. Because of a natural process. We have a natural process to explain how and where this thing will fall when I drop it. So that is what evolution is. Evolution isn't it is we have a natural process to explain the directionality, and therefore that's what it is. It's not a random thing. There's a process to explain what's happening.
The way I put it, and I wrote this down, I'm just looking for how I used to phrase this. It's basically that, let me look it up. Yeah, the organism participates in the very nature that endangers its selection.
Can you what do you mean by that?
Like, the thing that endangers the selection of certain traits is something the organism itself participates in. It's not just
the idea that it's exactly what Darko is saying. Like, you just really want to eat that, that higher leaf. So you just kind of like really push it. So therefore your genes are kind of like selected to really, push a little bit farther, it's just like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. There has to be, I do think that there is like a will to live that exists within natural selection, and it's the quandary that Darwin first proposed, where it's not like a Disney princess view of the world where all these animals are living in harmoniously. It's there's one organism that's fighting for its life and one that's fighting for its lunch, and that dichotomy is the basis of natural selection. And yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
External environment.
A lot of the random mutations are good, right? Not all mutations are bad. Exactly. Yeah, Leaky. Yeah. So mutations are basically good. Not all mutations are equal, and they're good. You want mutations in a genome. Population genetics wants there to be lots of genetic divergence between the individuals within a population, because that's how you create genetic diversity to withstand any sudden change in the factors that would be living there. So you actually do want you don't want all the organisms to have the same genome, basically. He seems dedicated to blurring the different ways in which genetic variants can arise. Yeah, I agree. And then also it's kind of because, well, in his mind, it's like a organism is choosing a path. So they're like choosing what genes and stuff could be impacting their life, and that just doesn't, there isn't like a supernatural ability that organisms have over their own body. It just doesn't work that way.
Interesting. I mean, a lot of it is
Interesting.
external, right? Because it's going to be, viruses. It's going to be it's a predator where they're in an evolutionary arms race, and they have to, like a mongoose and a viper or something. They have to, the mongoose has to have anti-venom proteins, or it's like abiotic.
Like the organism is selected for reasons that it itself participates in.
No.
Well, it's a niche. They're evolved in order to do something. They're not making a choice, a conscious choice.
No, there's no consciousness at all. But
okay, well, I would argue there probably is.
The specific nature of the organism, like what that organism is, it's basically a question of being, right? The very form of the organism is part of why an organism is selected for in the way that it is. It has an active role in participating in this, which is not just this kind of passive process by which organisms are determined either by DNA or environment. Like the form of the organism matters.
Yeah, like for example, like the famous examples, Darwin's finches, right, where you're going to have like different finches that have different beak shapes that are just better at foraging for different types of seeds, right? Are they choosing the seed there, or is it just a nature of their ability to actually do it?
I'm basically trying to say that. Let me just put this simply. I'm basically just trying to say that since natural selection is tautological, there has to be a place for the actual organism, right, to participate in its own selection. Like, since it's tautological, all it means is that whatever characteristics of the organism help it survive, the very nature of the organism itself, it has to have a decisive role in that.
That doesn't, though. It doesn't. Like, you don't get to choose what genes are just expressed over time. Like, it just doesn't. That's not how it works. You just don't.
Like, why is it, for example, that a tarantula is selected for in the way it is, as opposed to a pigeon, right? You can't just explain that in terms of some kind of one-size-fits-all notion of the essence
DNA.
of life. Each one has a very unique. Each one is a unique form of life, right?
Yeah.
You can say, okay, well, because this is why the spider it needed this in order to survive. But then the question is, why did it need to survive? Why did it have to be a spider and not like a bird or something?
Well, I mean, I'd argue the blueprint of the DNA made that tarantula a tarantula, not a spider. It's the DNA that makes that difference.
I don't think so, because it's a chicken or the egg. Why is the DNA constituted in such a way in the first place?
Because they breed together. Like, so for example, there's this thing called cryptic species. Cryptic species are.
I think DNA is an artifact of organisms, not the actual essence of what organisms are. I think the organism has precedence over, like, the DNA to me is a symptom of an organism, not the thing that determines why an organism is the way it is. First, an organism is the way it is. Then it's like a form of philosophical existentialism as opposed to essentialism. First, there's an existence, then there's the essence. So to me, it's the same when it comes to life. There has to be some kind of organism first, and then the organism determines its constituent parts. And then if you want to go even further in terms of like humanity, first there is like whatever you want to call it, consciousness or spirit, whatever you want to call it. And then there is all of the material prerequisites that make it possible.
Yeah, exactly. This is me debating Haas in 2022. He believes in Lysenkoism because he's a communist. So, yeah, I mean, him just like kind of like creating this spirit now and conflating a spirit with the consciousness. Now we've like conflated these terms, and I'm thinking like, oh gosh, now it's like, now I have to talk about and defend this. This is crazy.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to just take this in. I've never heard this take before. This is really interesting. I mean, but the thing that's so weird though is like, if you change the DNA of an organism, right? If I insert a gene into a plant and then then all of a sudden the pollen it grows up and there's pollen, and I take the pollen of that and then I put it into the next organism, the next plant. I put it on the flower, and then I look at the genome of the seeds from that next organism. Some of them are going to have that piece of DNA that I actually inserted, and the only difference between those plants is the DNA. So there's no reason for it to make it otherwise.
Literally the only change is the DNA, but now there is a new capability, a protein that never existed before, and the basis of that new thing is the DNA. Like that's the only change that happened. There wasn't like an organism that's just like, I want to have a new capability. Hi, Gail. Dr. Greg, that word "interesting" is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I know. I'm like trying to gain some time. I'm going like, what is going on? So,
Then the DNA being the heredity aspect of it, right?
Yeah, but what I've read is that when it comes to these direct interventions in the DNA, there's a few common problems. One of the first, most probably common problem I've heard of is that transgenerationally, this does not last several generations. The change doesn't.
Of course.
And then the second problem, I guess, which is kind of related, is that the organism no longer becomes viable in the long term. Like the change kind of like injures the organisms in some kind of way.
Of course it does.
It tries to repair the change or something like that. Like, have you heard about this kind of repair issue before?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're doing, this happens a lot. So if you insert a gene and you don't have a selection for it, so like that, the selection is basically you're making it so, and unless it makes this gene that you inserted, it dies. And people do antibiotic resistances a lot. That's kind of like they call it a marker, where you insert the DNA and it has
they're not just going
to grow only
keep
if you have
extra
that
DNA
gene in there. It doesn't. And you're right in the fact that, like, if you insert a bunch of DNA that's superfluous and that it doesn't need in order to survive, then it's going to take longer to make that DNA if it's longer, if the length of the DNA is longer. So it's going to have to spend more resources. So it's going to be outcompeted by the regular, the parent strain, right? But like, for example, the Monsanto gene puts in a gene to make glyphosate. So glyphosate is, and you spray it on, all of the, if you spray it on all the plants, everything that doesn't have the Monsanto gene is going to die. So in that case, it's more fit, right? Because it's actually doing better.
But Monsanto's a good example because the GMOs are not viable, right? They don't.
They literally
there has to
are
be constant new generations of the what do they call them again? The blueprint.
Well, I mean, this is
the
kind
seed.
of the thing. Yeah, they call it the restorer gene. Basically, they knock out the restorer gene and the ability for the plants to actually make seeds. So that's a biotech kind of like thing where it's, the patent is with the plant, so now they're protecting their product and they're not allowing it to be made anymore. So it's
right.
Yeah, I mean that's specifically done that way in order for the farmers to have to go back and keep buying from Monsanto. I'm not talking about the business practice there. I'm just talking about the product, right? I'm talking about the ability for that corn plant to actually.
What I read is that even without that, over long term, the plants they basically degenerate. They're like no longer.
No, they're fine. They're completely fine.
What is the word? They're no longer as healthy as they used to be over generations, and they kind of basically corrupt.
Viable?
So they need to constantly have this genetic engineering in order to maintain this. They're not viable yet.
I mean, genetically modified organisms aren't inherently less productive. They're actually, I mean, if you make them more, capable of, for example, doing photosynthesis at a higher rate or something like that, they're going to do photosynthesis at a higher rate.
Yeah, exactly. The breeding and stuff that we do for maize, for example, has happened over tens of thousands of genes over 10,000 years, and the maize is completely fine, and you're changing a lot more genes there than just single gene inserts with molecular biology. So the idea that like they're not like stable is just wrong.
Seen examples of this lasting cross-generationally and maintaining viability.
This is, genetically modified organisms are usually one or two genes. When animals breed, normally you're crossing thousands of genes, right? So,
oh my gosh!
So
it's so crazy.
If we were just thinking about that, like, what's the oddities? What's the probability of a bad thing happening when you're doing 1,000 changes versus just one? I've heard the analogy of genetically modified organisms is kind of like sending in SEAL Team 6 or something to take out like a targeted assassination versus just breeding as an ability to make a targeted productive choice, kind of like a carpet bomb, where you're just kind of like taking out the entire city versus like exactly what you want to do.
I understand that, but the problem with the targeted attack is there's too many unintended consequences. So the way I've read about it is that when you have a targeted attack,
he's like thinking about some type of like wartime scenario where there's like unintended casualties in war or something like that. It's like, no, dude, it's just an analogy. You don't have to think about like, the.
There's always going to be unintended consequences you couldn't account for. Whereas in the carpet bombing, all of these side effects that you weren't aiming for are part of the metabolism of the organism, and basically like part of the kind of thing that, like, it may not be what you cared about, but it's still necessary for the organism to exist.
It matters. I mean, there's if you you're right in the fact that if you're like, let's say you're doing CRISPR or some gene editing technique and you're trying to knock out or disable a particular gene, and there's a similarity on that part of the gene to other genes, you can get, it's called off-target effects, where you're knocking things out or you're disabling things accidentally. And I mean, we figure that out and whether or not that happened in a whole host of ways, but we can make it really targeted. And then at the end, we can actually see if the genome is what we think it is by just sequencing the genome. So we sequence the genome and see if there's any of those off-target effects that we found. And if there isn't, then we can go forward.
To me, the problem with CRISPR in general is treating the symptom instead of the disease, though. Like, to me,
just keep saying
they try to see the gene as the source of why organisms are the way they are, instead of a kind of repository of information about why it is the way it is. So trying to actually cause an organism to be a certain way, I don't think is... I think basically my view of CRISPR and genetic engineering has been basically like, it's a way to mutilate organisms. Yes, it'll change things about them maybe in the short term.
It's always negative.
But it hasn't proven its viability in terms of being able to induce changes into organisms that allow them to still be like holistic organisms. Like, it doesn't allow them to actually,
organisms. Oh my gosh, they're the same thing.
The eloquence and complexity and, what do I put it? Holistic way in which an organism reproduces itself isn't something that can be like accounted for by it.
Of course it can.
Interesting. I mean, I guess I have a problem with the term like holistic. I guess that's kind of like are you just talking about
exactly, holistic health, exactly.
I mean, like, organisms, what makes an organism work, I guess is the way I put it, or live, is various complicated parts working together in ways that we don't even know, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we may think is useless when it comes to organisms. Like, for example, the term junk DNA, like,
oh my gosh, I hate this junk DNA term.
Well, then they find that actually junk DNA does
he isn't
have
no
a very
he doesn't
important
sell
role.
it does,
yeah. So it's like we're always discovering that organisms are made of very complicated parts, and trying to isolate one part doesn't really account for like what makes the whole thing tick. Like, it's kind of like the trees instead of the forest type of thing. Like, you're focusing on one part, but you don't actually know what makes the whole thing tick in the first place. It's again like, why is a spider a spider? Is it because of the gene? Well, no, because the gene is just one part of what makes a spider, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just, we can sequence the genomes of different spiders and we can see how they're hereditary. So basically, before genetics ever was like a thing, the discovery of the DNA and that kind of stuff, like, we had animals set up in different groupings and different ideas and how they're all related. And then once we have genetics, now we can actually have a way of looking back and seeing if that's all correct, right? That's called phylogenetics. So we can actually go back and see if we can group everything in the right thing, and they're similar.
Well, there's a few problems with that. So usually analyzing DNA will actually produce very accurate results in terms of ancestry and like lineage and relatability of organisms and so on and so on. We use it to test for paternity. So yes, DNA is definitely a repository of information about heredity, but it's actually not always the case. There are animals that appear very similar that we can probably like guess.
This is called cryptic species. This is what I was talking about before.
Related to each other somehow, but their DNA is just so radically different. Well, I think I've seen a case of that. Do you know what I'm talking about with this?
I mean, yeah. I mean, sometimes you look at this is one of the things where we've had to use genetics in order to see whether or not like what is actually the closest related organism to like an elephant is like actually like a really small like mammal that's not necessarily, you'd never think that would be the thing that was the most closely related to an elephant. And then going back to what I was talking about before, we even have cryptic species where they look exactly the same. If like really two organisms that look exactly the same because they evolved to do that. Yeah. And then we look at their genetics and they're different. And it's like, well, that's crazy. And then sure enough, we look at like the phallus or something, and the phallus is square shaped instead of triangle shaped, and that causes this ability for species to only breed with one another, which gives them the genetic differences.
Well, but since the elephant can't even breathe with that small mammal or whatever, like, doesn't that probably say something about the plasticity of DNA? Like, can't DNA kind of be reshuffled in ways we didn't know before? We call them mutations, right? And we call them usually random mutations, but with activism and so on and so on, it seems like the driving force of life
with activism
is not actually DNA. It seems like DNA takes a backseat to a more real driving force of life.
Yeah, you're talking about natural selection. There's going to be...
No, because natural selection is just about the interaction between the survivability of an organism and its environment, right?
Or another predator.
Yeah,
so it's biology or
an organism. I would consider other organisms to be part of the environment, but
okay, all right.
Yeah, but that doesn't actually take into account the form of the organism itself. It doesn't actually like recognize the organism itself as having any role.
Yes, it does.
So then how would that small mammal be related to the elephant then, in your eyes?
I think that basically it could prove that similarity of DNA does not actually always prove relatability.
But okay, so you're saying that those organisms aren't actually related to one another, even though the genetics says they are, and they're different because they've lived differently in different environments?
Obviously all mammals are related, but maybe not as much as was thought.
But it only takes a couple of genetic mutations in order for, like, for example, the size difference in dogs is one gene. So you just have one gene turned on super large, so you have a bunch of growth hormone, and then you get a Great Dane, or it's turned off and you have a Chihuahua.
What gene is that?
I think it's the feline growth hormone, FGH. I'm not 100% sure on that. But it's sometimes it just takes one thing in order to stop the things from happening, and it can have a big difference in the outcome of the organism.
Canine growth hormone?
Yeah, I get that, but the thing is that I don't think DNA. I think the reason why DNA shows relatability and ancestry and stuff is not necessarily because yeah,
it's canine growth hormone. Somatotropin is a peptide hormone produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Imbalances cause things like pituitary dwarfism, cognitive deficiency.
Because I think DNA shows ancestry, but that's just because lineage of DNA. Let me just put it this way. Fuck, my brain is fogging. Let me put it this way. Mm-hmm. The reason why a father and a son share the same DNA is not because of the DNA itself. Like, there's a epigenetic form of heredity that is the reason why the DNA is itself similar.
Okay.
Which is relating to the organism itself, coming from the organism itself, not coming from the DNA.
I think I do really well at this exchange right here. I remember this.
But we can see groups of people based off of just DNA. We don't need to see that epigenetic factors that does probably exist. There's some probably epigenetic carryover that exists, but it seems like it's an add-on versus the distinct differences. Like, so for example, there's markers in our genomes from endogenous retroviruses, ERVs, where these are viruses that actually insert into our genomes, and we can actually see that through sequencing, and we can actually sequence it and see, like, for example, if that's like a unique event, then people only in that area are going to have that trait, and then you can actually more specifically even like see how that mutates over time.
Well, viruses are RNA forms of, I don't even know what they're called. Viruses are just viruses. They're not even organisms, right? So that's what they.
This is a good question. In microbiology, they're not considered living. I think that's what you're talking about. In my opinion, I'm against the scientific community here, and I actually do think that viruses are living. So
why is that?
Because they're a product of evolution. They can evolve. So I don't see how anything that's that can evolve that quickly, and on factors of environment or biology, how that couldn't be considered living, in my opinion.
Yeah, but so I don't know if that's the best example, but
I mean, just for the record, I accept the scientific consensus, but I personally believe that viruses could be considered living. But I accept what it is, and the fact that that the scientific consensus is that viruses are not living, therefore viruses are not living. Do you know what I mean? I think that there is like a good case to say that viruses can and should be considered living, but since I haven't done that work in order to make that point, and I haven't convinced people, therefore viruses aren't considered living. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
The problem is that for some, even for people who are like brothers, some people inherit DNA that others don't, right? Like not just DNA from parents, but I'm talking like DNA from ancestors. That's why like there's so many wacky stuff from 23andMe. Like yes, DNA broadly speaking will indicate closeness of relatedness and stuff, but I just don't think why our DNA is structured in the way it is just because of DNA itself.
What else would it be?
I think DNA has to be taken as a part of a broader system, which is the organism.
Oh, this is the really good part.
That is actually
what would be the point of heredity? You're saying DNA and something else. So what else would be?
This is so good. This is a good line of questioning.
Heredity.
What's the other part?
I think the
RNA?
precise problem, what I reject in the first place, is a point of heredity, like a unit of heredity. That's why I reject the concept of a gene. I don't think there is a single point of heredity. I think heredity is a process that of the transmutation of characteristics from one organism to the next,
March
or the reproduction
2022.
of an organism. That's heredity, right? So that has to be taken from a broader perspective of reproduction. What is reproduction?
But I mean, even epigenetics, it's just methylation on a chromosome. It's still DNA based that we found in biology. So I guess I'm asking is if it's not DNA and you think that there's DNA plus something else, like what would be the other things, like proteins, RNA, like how would that?
Yeah,
what would be
I mean, both
vessel?
proteins, RNA, the cytoplasm, the rest of the cell, all of these things play a part in the determination of the organism. They're not all just like, as the geneticists of Lysenko's time called them, they're not just the nutritive soil of the gene.
Yeah, cytoplasms. That was a weird one.
Okay, interesting. I guess I just don't see how, like for example, the sperm is donating things that are like the proteins and the RNA. I mean, there has to be, right? Because it's for example, the flagellus in there, it's flapping, man. There's going to be definitely like it's happening. There's definitely ATP being made in order to send that thing, and that's why that's actually the reason why mitochondria, why we only inherit the mitochondria. Why the sperm doesn't donate any mitochondrial DNA to the offspring is because the flagella like gets taken off, and then all the mitochondria is from the egg, and then it's
but
from the.
Then like what makes the sperm carry what it does? It's like a chicken or the egg thing.
Well, meiosis, right? Meiosis is the process that our chromosomes are independently assorted and going through and made into daughter cells, and then delivered.
But what? Yeah, but like isn't. Like, for
True.
example, some people think that the what DNA is inherited by offspring, for example, is just random, right? Do we know it's random? I don't think we do.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is independent assortment, where it's not necessarily like the chromosomes are broken into daughter cells. I think that's what you're talking about. I don't know.
I'm basically just talking about like. Is the offspring just a random combination of the DNA material of the father and mother? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's shuffled. The DNA is shuffled, and the different chromosomes, they line up. The sister chromatid line up, and then the parts are shuffled between one another.
I don't know. I just don't believe. I think we see it shuffling, but I think there's a deeper reason at hand.
But where would the proteins and the RNA come from then? Like,
well, the proteins in the RNA would have a decisive role in what DNA gets passed.
Okay, but it would be the vast majority of biological material is going to be from the egg then, because the sperm doesn't do anything. Once the flagella pops off, and it does it as soon as it enters the membrane.
Doesn't the sperm carry nuclear DNA?
Yeah, but I'm talking about like I'm trying to understand what your thought is on this, where it's like
the nuclear DNA being carried by the sperm.
Yeah,
probably isn't.
What else is there?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is
that comes from somewhere. That comes from somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Sperm comes from somewhere.
But I'm talking about your idea where if RNA and DNA is being RNA, DNA, and proteins are all being passed, and that's all a unit of heredity, then the DNA is coming from mom and dad, or XX and XY, and then all of the proteins and the RNA and all that kind of stuff, the biological material that's other than DNA, like 99% of that is all going to be from the egg, and there's basically going to be no heredity from XY. And I don't think that you believe that.
You mean that there would be no significance of paternal heredity?
According to your theory.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that the bit of paternal heredity comes from the father's body, right?
Where?
Which already presumes
where would it
it's kind
actually
of like
come
the chicken
from?
and egg. Like, what comes first, men or women, right?
It's just the head of the sperm, though.
It's kind of like an ancient
where is it coming from?
Mystical thing, like the father's seed, right? And then the mother is basically like the soil or whatever, right? And the father's the idea, the mother's just the matter, right? So the basic idea would probably be that, and then the reason I'm bringing up that ancient shit is because like people ask, where does the idea come from? Is the idea just come from outer space or something, or just from thin air, and then that's what gives form to material reality, or does it come from somewhere, right? To cut down the bullshit.
Yeah, I'm just a biologist. I don't know about that.
Yeah. The nuclear DNA.
I mean, that's like he's like talking about like spirit, the spirit world.
I don't think it's completely random what determines that DNA from the father.
Okay, but my point is that the vessel, if you think about the vessel that's delivering the heredity from the father, it's not much that the sperm is carrying. It's just carrying DNA.
Carrying the nuclear DNA.
Yeah, but
that nuclear DNA is coming from, again, all this other bullshit, RNA and proteins and shit.
What's in there? Okay. Where is it?
And then the DNA is carrying that heredity from the proteins and the RNA and the cell.
Yeah, which was presumably a decisive part in the
so you just admitted
structure of the DNA.
You just admitted it. So then you agree then that the DNA is the unit of heredity, because all of that proteins and the RNA and the cells is all passing through the DNA of the sperm then.
Well, by that criterion, the only unit of heredity would just be small sperm cells, right? That's obviously not what people mean.
Well,
so that
is literally what it is.
It would be the moment of... Well, it's actually technically not true, though, because, as you pointed out, a great deal of heredity comes from the egg. So I don't think it would be a unit of heredity. I think what it would be is it would be a vessel of heredity, if you want to call it that. Part of the process of heredity.
Vessel of heredity.
That's what I mean. It's what sperm is. It's the seed, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the same as what a gene is, according to Mendel.
Interesting. So the idea of the cell, the RNA, and the DNA as the unit of heredity.
It's just put it this way, there is no unit of heredity at all. Heredity is a process of the reproduction of an organism. Organisms don't have a fixed essence. Organisms actively produce their own essence. Like what the essence of an organism is because of the organism. It's not the reverse. An organism isn't the way it is because of its essence. The essence is the way it is because of the organism.
Gosh.
When you're saying essence, are you talking about something supernatural, or are you talking about natural?
Essence basically just means like the DNA, the gene, whatever you want to call it. The thing that you think is what is like the content of an organism, right? Or everything has a content and a form. So scientists believe in genes in the past because they said, what is the content of an organism? What actually matters about that organism that makes it the way it is, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, before the discovery of DNA, it was proteins, or there was like some weird idea of what it is.
They were looking in microbiology, looking at cells and looking at all this different types of microbiological structures, and then they found the double helix, which people thought was the gene, but I contest that too.
Do you think that like the egg contributes more of the essence to the offspring than the sperm, or are they equal? Because the egg's a lot bigger. The egg's huge compared to the sperm.
How would I put this?
It would have to be.
I don't know if
What's the essence?
I think the essence of what organism? The child to be, supposedly, right?
Yeah, the sperm and the
what would
egg.
be the scientific term? The offspring, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of the offspring organism, what contributes more to its essence? That's actually a fascinating point. So when the actual sperm and the egg interact, the organism itself is becoming, is emerging, right? Is actually being created. And at that point, it begins to actually endanger its own essence. So in terms of which one contributes more, I think that's precisely the point. Neither simply contribute to the essence. Their interaction produces the very organism that then has an essence. So in terms of like what role they play in the creation of an organism, obviously it's like they have an equal importance. You can't have, there's no child without the birds and the bees, right? So
I mean, but
need
it's only
both.
equal because with DNA as the heredity like unit. Because if you're talking about size, I mean, the size of an egg is vastly bigger than the sperm. It's almost like the sperm is almost nothing. That's the reason why mitochondrial.
Hold on, but the size doesn't matter. What do you mean size?
Well, I'm thinking like I'm trying to understand your viewpoint here, and I'm trying to think like the way that the egg is contributing more than just DNA, right? It'd be like
In traditional kind of mythology, whatever, traditional human view, the mother contributes more to the kind of physical matter of a child, physical aspect, just not physical even in terms of like, just in terms of the matter, the raw stuff, and the man contributes more to the form, the idea, right?
Oh my
so man
gosh.
contributes to the structure
So
of
like
that matter.
patriarchal.
Okay, yeah, I'm just a lowly biologist. I can't speak to that. so I guess I'm more natural in my thinking in that way, where it's just it.
So my
what is
suspicion
that?
would probably be that the mother's part of heredity plays more of a role, more of an important role in like the material aspect, whereas the nuclear DNA has more of a structuring role of the organism.
Oh my
There's also the
gosh.
mitochondrial DNA too. So you have two genomes inside you.
Yeah, but to me, the nuclear DNA from the father basically has a more structuring role.
Interesting. But I mean, mitochondria DNA can still be traced, and you agree with that, and you do think that there is some way of at least overlaying some heredity on that mitochondrial DNA mutation, right?
Wait, what's that?
I mean, the mutations of the mitochondrial genome are going to exist, and it's we can trace that back, and that's why like Ancestry and .com and 23andMe and stuff all work, because it's the ability to track those genetic changes and how they're similar with certain people that are related to one another, or that bred together in a population-wide kind of thing over time. So we can kind of surmise. Do you disagree with that?
What are you saying?
I'm wondering if you agree that the mutations of the mitochondrial genome, which is from the egg, not the sperm, if we could track those mutations over time, and that is a sign of heredity.
You can track mutations of mitochondrial DNA over time,
Yeah.
Within
and
the
that's a
body.
sign of heredity.
I'm wondering if what do you think about that?
What do you mean?
So
What do you mean by changes over time, like across generations? It's kind of confusing. Like,
Yeah.
let's say okay. What's the point though? I mean, to me, the changes are not random.
Well, but the mutations can be from like DNA polymerase from replicating the genome of the mitochondria. And
I don't think changes in mitochondrial DNA are random.
They are. The DNA polymerases
changes
literally
come
are.
from then, like, what do they come about?
From the extent of my understanding is that they found that almost no DNA mutations are actually random. They're always based on pretty probabilistic
You're
pressures.
not understanding
and,
the
they can
difference
actually
between the
predict.
mitochondrial
They
and
never
the
actually hand them in a completely. They never actually happen in a random way.
They are 100%.
I mean, you're going to have, so in a population, you're going to have,
I mean, in the mitochondrial genome is even less, like, it's not subjected to free natural selection parameters. So you actually have mitochondrial genome, and that's why you can so stably track it over time.
of a gene, you're going to have different DNA sequences along that population that's breeding with each other. There's going to be a lot of different types of mutations, and this is called the product of this is called codon usage bias, where you can have different nucleotides, different 3-letter combinations make the same amino acid. And we like biological organisms even know this, and they'll choose a specific codon for a specific amino acid and prefer it over other ones. So we know that for a single gene, there's going to be a lot of different mutations within that population. So they're making the same gene, they're making the same protein, but the starting DNA material is going to be vastly different.
Well, doesn't that prove that the gene, so-called gene, is not the determining factor?
No, that's the product of evolution, that these organisms are able to use different DNA sequences to make the same protein, so that, like, for example, let's say there was
I don't think the reason why they're producing that protein is just because of natural selection. They're producing that, I mean, like, if the reason they're producing that protein isn't because of the gene, right, as you said, there's different codons that produce for the same protein, then there's like this is again loose language, but there's like a deeper will for them to be the way they are at the expense of the DNA. The need for the protein comes at the expense of the DNA.
I mean, you're kind of right in that, like, let's say there's an organism that needs to survive and it needs to take out a specific protein that's being emitted as a toxic chemical that they need to take care of, right? And there's these enzymes that take out these other proteins. They're called proteases. And let's say that you don't have the specific one that's needed to take out that specific protein. Well, like the protease that's somewhat similar to the protease that's needed could like misfold. There could be additional mutations that happen in that part of the active site that's needed in order to take out that toxic compound. And the organisms within that population, right? The small percentage of those organisms that have accrued those mutations in that active site that we're talking about, they're going to breed more often because they're going to be able to take out that toxic compound, and then they're going to be able to evolve. So it comes down to the DNA, the ability to have those differences in the DNA in order to deal with that toxic compound. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Holy
so I would argue that it would still come down to somehow like the DNA, and we see this in, like, for example, we know that through synthetic biology, the delivery of DNA, that we can turn on and off genes that exist already in the genome, and we know that we can stop the expression of certain or translation of certain proteins by taking out specific parts of the DNA. Like if it doesn't have the ability to make it genetically, and that the gene isn't there, then we can stop it. But there is that wiggle room, kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah, but to me that just calls into question the concept of a gene.
Yeah, I guess like there's heredity and then DNA as like the basis of biology. So. But the ability to make the proteins and to
I don't deny DNA is what basically codes for the proteins, right?
Okay.
But like why those proteins are even needed, what makes those proteins used, how they're used, and the broader system that they're a part of is just something I don't think can be accounted for by DNA.
You're right. No, that you're right. So you're talking about evolution there, where it's like the changes and all that kind of stuff of DNA, and then natural selection is the screening process that those mutations go on to see what is actually successful or not, and then that creates a species.
I don't think there's enough, so to speak, room for experimentation for natural selection to be able to explain the form of the organism. Like, it's not like you can just have, you know what I mean? Like, it seems improbable. I think even mathematically, it's not possible. It's not possible for organisms to be the way they are purely because randomly they acquired a mutation that
it's not random
made them survive at the expense of everyone else.
Random.
I mean, I think that if you looked at the time frame of how long organisms have been around, how long life has been on Earth, and then how long the generational time is for a bacteria or a yeast. I mean, there's 2 billion years of evolution that just happened at the bacteria stage before eukaryotes even came about. Plants and eukaryotic life only came about 700 million years ago. I mean, it's very, very recent.
Yeah, I just to me the basic problem is that, yeah, I understand the time scale is like very, very long, but it's just natural selection itself being able to have and explain. Again, it's to me, it's tautological. Like, it's not necessarily that it's wrong, just that for it to be random just doesn't seem possible to me.
But it's not random. Natural selection isn't random. That's the thing, is that your random mutations.
Well, the idea is like there's
that.
random mutations in DNA, like an infinite possibility of different mutations, and that the ones
It's not
that
infinite.
work, so to speak, according to environmental conditions, are selected for.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's enough room for infinite possibilities. I think the reason why the selection happens is because of the organism too. It's not just because, like, you know what I mean by that?
We're not like, so the mutations that happen, it's not like, I'm going to have the mutations that, there's no amount of mutations that my kid is going to become a fish. You know what I mean? It's not going to like, there's that amount of mutations like isn't possible. It's going to be like just slight changes that happen, maybe, the birth defects is what we normally call it, but there's a lot of different variations that happen, and even in our own genome.
Yeah, I know, but in order for those variations to actually be decisive and selected for by the environment, there has to either be an environmental change, or it just doesn't seem very plausible to me.
Interesting. Are there any scientists like now that you think are really following like what you're talking about, like a paper or any like experiments that you think that are really like showing what you're talking about?
Before I answer why,
I'm just curious. Like I like to read primary sources in science journals and stuff like that. So I'm just curious. There is like a epigenetics like research going on. So I'm curious, like just curious about that. Do you think that? Yeah, just a personal interest. I don't.
So there is. He's actually a. He. I don't know his actual name because he uses a pseudonym, but. He does go by the name Pesto Mime. You ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. Is that
he's
talking on or posting on?
I think he contributes to the Nature Journal.
Okay.
He's just trolling.
I found like a.
Also blogs and stuff too.
Okay. Interesting.
He's just trolling. He's like,
okay, cool, man.
And I'm like, okay.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the
I'm
discussion.
like, okay, well.
So hopefully I've been like fair to you, and if you have any questions,
I think you've been fair.
Cool, man. Cool. Like if you have any questions on biology or science or anything, I'd love to answer them if you have any questions in the future. So.
All right. See you later.
Sounds good, man. See you.
I thought it was like weird that he was like trolling me at the end. I was like being freaking really fair to him, I thought. So I was a little bummed that he like started trolling me and stuff, but whatever. So yeah, that was it, guys. That was it. That was my Haas debate. I thought it was I think he just repeated the same things a lot of times, and I didn't push out of that, but he kind of fell back to the same roots, or the same mind loops. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting though. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching that with me. It was fun. Interesting. It was interesting, huh? It was interesting. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna take off. I asked for like a source because I was just like, what do you? I wanted to just be like, bro, you're completely outside of your scope, and it feels weird to, that you're just like continuing to push this. It felt like kind of, I don't know. But thank you guys. He was stalling. Yeah, he was being rude at the end. But all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Interesting, Souls. Interesting that you want that sticker. Interesting. All right, guys. And thanks for being here. We're out. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye. See ya. Have fun. How's it going? Peace.